want to be clear that this is not, in my opinion, representative of the average Baptist belief system. I just want you to know what some Baptists seem to get away with advocating for. I think some people see religion and they think, oh, hey, I've got a bunch of gross thoughts in my head and I need a way to justify it, and so I'll use this book. And that's a shame. Because I think, first of all, speaking as a non-believer, if you've got a book that you think justifies any old behavior, why not justify good behavior? Maybe because it doesn't require justification. That's not been my experience. I find you have to go out of your way to convince people with the modern mindset that something that is good for them or is good for others is also allowed. You want to pick up trash on the side of the road, you need a license. It's just the weirdest thing. Or to get caught doing a crime. But nonetheless, some people truly are abusive of religion, and ain't it funny that it is the same people that call people groomers all the time that are advocating for child marriage. This is a blog that has had 12 million views since it was made about 10 years ago. It came to be in 2014 at some point. I don't remember the specific day. But nonetheless, it's been in existence for the best part of a decade. And in that time, it's gotten about 1 million views a year. So now you have a sense of how popular it is. Truly, it's not something where I want you to worry that, oh no, this is gonna be everybody. But it's not nothing. 12 million views is a lot of folks reading a lot of times, frankly. And this is the kind of stuff that they're advocating for. You can see the headline there. This blog, Biblical Gender Roles, 7 Steps to Grooming Your Young Christian Wife. Now, look, your old pal Jake took a bullet for you here. Because I was sure this had to be parody. So I read 2 or 3 of this person's blogs. It's not parody. And this guy jumps in the comments when somebody disagrees with him and just goes off on tangents, and it's this person seems to truly be committed to this belief system that he's made up. 7 steps to grooming your young Christian wife. Here's a letter written to him. I have read your site for some time. Why? But this is my first time writing you. My wife and I have been married a year. She is 18, and I am 24. Christ. Now I am trying to get my wife to follow her role as I begin to assume my role as leader. I am 6 years older than her, but that seems to just make it worse. She keeps saying, "You are not my father." She was raised in a strict family, and I guess she thinks now that she is married, she is free from all authority. I have recently put both of us on a budget. I have created a budget, and I keep my side, but she keeps overspending on hers. I read your article on 7 ways to discipline your wife. Jesus Christ. And you recommend taking away her debit card. I know I could do this, but in my view, that should be the last option. I am considering starting spanking her. I have mentioned it to her, not on the budget, but in general, and she's against it. I would say so. She thinks that spanking is treating her like a child. Yeah, the reason she thinks that is because spanking is treating her like a child. If you're an abusive parent, just slightly. You're not supposed to hit kids. You're really, 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 really not supposed to hit anybody. Now, this guy, I think you could hit, and you could be forgiven for it, but you're not supposed to. You're really not. Just some comments on the writer. First and foremost, this is the writer of the letter, so this is not the blogger who's writing this in. This is just somebody who's read a lot of it. This person was 23 when he married a 17-year-old. That's effed up. Don't do that. That's effed up. Second of all, she is the sort of person who says, "You're not my father." In and of itself, effed up. The fact that it seems to be actually a fair argument, effed up. The fact that you think that you discipline your wife means you don't want an equal in a relationship. You want somebody who is subservient to you, and you're not a real man then. Nobody wants a coward for a husband. Nobody wants a weakling for a husband. So don't be a weak little coward that needs somebody who's ordered to like you, ordered to respect you. It's impossible for them to truly respect you then. And I think you know that, and I think writer of this, who I just assume watches this channel as well, I think you know you don't really have what it takes to earn anybody's respect, and so you have rushed to a belief system that requires people to pretend like they respect you. But you and I both know that they don't. Yeah, I read your warning about a wife reporting a husband for spanking her, and my wife would not do that. Yeah, because it's abusing your spouse. All right, let me jump down. To the response. What you just read was an email I received from a young Christian husband calling himself Robert. Whether or not he realizes it, what Robert is really asking is, how can I, as a Christian husband, groom my young wife? Gross. Grooming is sinful in humanism, but sacred in the Bible. Again, I'm not saying this. This is a Baptist saying this. Grooming is sinful in humanism, which is, I've noticed, humanism is this person's catch-all word for, in civilization. But sacred in the Bible. Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, defines the verb definition of groom as to clean and maintain the appearance of an animal, to make neat or attractive, to get into readiness for a specific objective, and this fits with the traditional understanding of this word, but humanists see grooming as one person conditioning another person to allow them or someone else to abuse them. No, that's something the far right started doing recently, and humanists, as he calls it, really just decent people, have been responding to that because, this guy and his ilk have been using it as an excuse to be terrorists. They accuse random people, teachers, just regular old citizens, of being groomers, and then attack them. The term is often associated with pedos, preying on children, sex traffickers conditioning women for prostitution, or husbands conditioning their wives to allow them to abuse them. Yeah. That last part is exactly what the fella above is asking to do. So yes. According to secularhumanism.org, a core tenet of humanism is freeing the individual from traditional controls by family, church, and state, increasingly empowering each of us to set the terms of his or her own life. This is why the concept of one person exerting control over another is heresy to a humanist, while conversely, consent is sacred. Yeah, I will say this. Normally the right wing has no idea what's going on with the left. But given that it's the criticism where we butt heads all the time over right-wing Christian fundamentalists, extremists, they get it exactly with what left-wingers believe about sex when they talk about consent. As long as the two people involved are consenting adults, we don't care. It's that simple. A child can, in fact, as long as the two people involved are consenting, we don't care. Somebody who is under the age of 18, legally, in a case where rarely I am in full agreement with everything the law says on this, federally, Christ's sake, or whatever, wherever they say it's 18, I am of that belief. I personally don't think if you're over 25 or if you are 25, you should be interested in anybody with the suffix teen used to describe their name, even if it's 19. I think you ought to be a little more ambitious than that. You ought to be interested in somebody that's seen a little bit of the world. But if you're under 18, you can't consent. It's impossible to consent because your brain isn't done baking yet inside your skull. So yes, they got it right. As long as we're talking about consenting adults. And again, I'm stressing that I'm being somewhat repetitive with that phrase. Then yes, the left is fine with it. Conversely, though, they're not interested, these folks, with consent. Right-wing extremists are only concerned, really, with authority, what somebody else says. They are concerned. They look at sex selfishly. What do I gain from it? Does a person titillate me personally? Will my community judge me? That's it. I don't see a lot of right-wingers interested in I don't see a lot of people like, hey, I'm a devout Christian and I got married when I was 18 and my wife and I got divorced. It just didn't work out, unfortunately, or she died or whatever. And now I'm getting back in the dating scene. How do I see if I'm good at sex? How do I please a lady? I don't see that very often. And it's not that I believe they're naturally great at it. It's not been what I've heard. What I see is how do I make a woman like me? It's messed up, man. And this is why grooming is a trigger word for humanists. But from a biblical perspective, grooming, when used in the sense of a husband conditioning his wife to be in complete subjection, I think he means subjugation, to him, and molding her behavior to his preferences is not evil or immoral. Yeah, it is, though. But rather, these actions are righteous, holy, and required of husbands by God. Remember that Merriam-Webster's online dictionary definition of grooming was to clean and maintain the appearance of an animal, to make neat or attractive, to get into readiness for a specific objective. Yeah, talking about animals there, chattel and what have you. And now let's compare that definition to what the Bible calls husbands to do towards their wives in Ephesians 5:25 through 27. Husbands, love your wives even as Christ I'm reading this for a reason. You'll see in a second. Husbands, love your wives even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with washing of water by the word, that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having a spot or wrinkle, Jesus Christ, buddy, or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. Look, I just can't stand it. Look at that first line. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church. In the church, what do? Well, you worship Christ. So, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church. How does this person expect to be viewed by his wife? Holy crap. Pun intended. Look at the striking parallels between the way God requires husbands to love their wives as Christ loves his church, and what grooming actually is. Jesus. So we can rightly say, as Christians, that the biblical call for husbands to wash their wives with the word of God, you get it. Important prerequisites for grooming your young bride. Just look at this. I mean, it goes. I'm not going to read you all this crap. Grooming works best with young wives. Unlearn what your culture has taught you. You must learn to embrace biblical gender roles. Seek out a male spiritual spiritual mentor. Yeah. Hey, guy. What do you think? Should guys be treated like kings and not have to do anything, not be of any value to anybody? Oh, you do? Okay, interesting. You must teach your wife biblical gender roles. Get your wife a female spiritual mentor if you can find one. Oh God, get him a Ghislaine Maxwell for sure. Mold your wife into the glorious wife you want her to be. Okay, it's gross. Discipline your wife, Christ. Here's something interesting. Let's pop down to the comments. Christ almighty. I saw a lady respond to this person. I saw a lady respond to this person essentially saying, I don't think you got it quite right here, pal. And I think she kind of nailed it. But what's more interesting to me? What's more interesting to me is the fact that I'll look for it on my own time. Is the fact that it led me to his about section where this guy talks about, oh, what are my qualifications? And he basically outs himself. And he says that he has really no qualifications. He said he was interested in theology in college. He said he was interested in all kinds of things, and then he didn't do any of it professionally. And he also doesn't note that he got a degree in any of it. And then he goes on to say, but you don't need those things to preach the word. You need them, to be respected by institutions, but not to preach the word. Okay, fair enough. Then he says, and I am a divorced man. Okay. And well, again, this is in his about section. And well, you cannot be divorced and be a pastor in his belief system. Again, I say, you don't need to be a pastor to preach the word. Sure. But he's giving relationship advice. And my suggestion to you all would be to remember that these folks, they personally shouldn't be taken seriously, but the things they advocate for should be. I promise you this guy does not have good views on homosexuals. I promise you this guy does not vote for people that have the best interests of Americans in mind. And when MAGA folks bust out that old, already tired insult of groomer, point them to that article. And point out that there really is only one group in the United States that is for grooming, that has advocated and continues to advocate literally for grooming young people. Guy got married, the writer of the letter to that fella, was a legal adult when he got married to somebody who was not. And oh, hey, by the way, a lot of southern states put forward laws that lower the age for consent and for marriage, and we should be aware of the fact that there's a whole lot of internalized guilt that comes out in the form of accusations against others. It ain't healthy. Let's see what y'all got to say.